So, welcome all for our lesson number 4 with SAS programming session. And the topic here you will be learning is preparing data. So, preparing data, you will be learning 3 topics into it: reading and filtering data, computing new columns, and of course, conditional processing. Now, till date, with the 5 steps of processing of data which we are learning through SAS programming, we have learned one can access data, how one can validate or explore your data. Now we are going to prepare your data as per your business requirements for generating reports. So for that, we are going to learn how one can read and filter data, how one can create new column apart from existing columns, how one can create new columns, okay, and conditional processing. So let's learn the first topic, reading and filtering data. Now, this is the third part of our process of your data processing, which you are learning through your SAS programming language, which is preparing data. So here we will be filtering our data by using functions. And of course, we'll be writing certain conditional statements to create a new data as per the required business conditions. So this is if then else is the condition, and of course functions on how one can use functions to select the rows or filter the rows as per the requirement. So this process of preparing data is predominantly we are going to use it a data step itself. Preparing data is not at all a part of proc step. It is preparing, so we know data step is the step where you are either creating a new data, you are modifying an existing data, or you are simply creating new data with new requirements from an existing data set. So that is where a data step here we are going to use it to have the required rows for your output data file so that that data will be used for reporting. So within this data step, we'll see how one can filter rows and columns. We'll see how one can create new column. New column is a computed new column. And we'll see how one can conditionally process your data. So when we say it's computing new columns, so this new columns computation is like, for example, we have a data for salaries of employees. Okay. So we already have a column for employees about salary column, and we want to have a new column, maybe it's a bonus, and bonus for every candidate or every employee is getting maybe 10% of the bonus irrespective of its job titles. Okay, so the new column should be a 10% of its salary, which is bonus. So that bonus is going to be your new column where you'll be writing its expressions 10% of its salary. That is where it is a computed column. Okay, then conditional processing is, now suppose now I already have a bonus data column, a column in my data along with my salary and job titles. So I can always write the condition that depending on the various job codes, it should select the salaries and generate the output. So I can write in case the job code is suppose manager, senior manager. Okay, suppose it's a sales representative type 1. So I can write a condition if sales representative 1, then I can give the condition that the bonus should be calculated as per their percent of salaries. Getting it? So that's simple. I'm just trying to tell you what is conditional processing. So this all is going to be performed only in a data step, not in a proc step. So data step is a powerful tool to create, clean, and prepare a data. Yes, so we are going to start with the data step. So initially when we are going to move into this data step, we have to start with the data statement, correct? So please hold. Studio was connected, but because after long gap, it is again getting reinitialized. Okay. Now you know we have a data with us in my library. So we have a library for PG1 class birth dates. Okay. So see, we have class birth date data file with us. Now this data has 19 rows and 6 columns. Fine. So I want to create a new data out of it. So I may have a data step written. I may write class birth date, but it's going to be saved in my work library. So this data set I want to create it from an existing data file. So to create a data from an existing data file, I use a set statement and I provide its reference that where this data is. So this data is in my existing permanent library PG1 and I run or I stop my step by using run. So when I submit this data step, just check your log what is trying to tell us. So see, it's giving you an output as an data file, so it's output data. So it's telling here also, here you have all 19 rows and 6 columns. So check your log. 19 observations were read from input dataset pg1 dot class birth date, and it's telling a new dataset work dot class date was or is been created, which has 19 observations and 6 variables. So what has happened here? It is creating this dataset from reading from a permanent library. We are creating a temporary dataset because it's default saving it into temporary library. And of course, it's copying all the rows and all the columns from your input data to your output data set. So it's actually mirror image from this data. Only difference is this is getting saved into a new library. We are referencing it as temporary and we are reading it from permanent data file. So whenever you are going to create a new data set from an existing data file, we are going to read it through a set statement. Agreed, everyone?
Yes, Ashwini.
Okay. So this is where it's telling we are going to use a data step to create a SAS data set. So data step, it starts with a data statement. So it specifies to create a new data file name, either temporary or permanent. And set is a statement where you specifies the input table name. Again, the input table name can be one of the permanent data files or a temporary data file, depending what is your requirement and how you are writing it. So this is one example. You are creating my class from sashelp.class. So you are creating a table my class, which is going to be a temporary from sashelp.class, which is a permanent data. So from a permanent data set, you are creating a temporary data and it's going to read all the rows and all the columns from input data to your output data. Fine. So when I'm submitting this data step, what is happening at the back end is most important part. As a data analyst, you should understand how SAS processes this data step, how it's reading it, and what are the various phases which is happening at the back end. Being a data analyst, we should be aware. Okay. So whenever we are submitting our data step, there are always two processes appearing at the back end. So the two processes are, first one is compilation, second is execution. So this happens for your data step whenever you submit. First phase is compilation, second is execution. So what is a compilation phase? So the word itself, compilation, means it compiles the required thing to process your data. So what happens is, first and foremost, always understand whenever we submit this step, either it's a data step or a proc step, SAS always reads the step sequentially from top to bottom and the statements from left to right. Okay, so when I submit this data step at the back end, it will start reading the statements. Okay, so that's what it's telling. First and foremost, when it starts reading the statements, it checks for syntax errors. Then it identify column attributes and establish new table metadata. So in short, in the backend, it tries to compile the required thing to create your new data file. So what a new data file name you are going to create here is work.class.date. So what is it actually? It's going to, when it's into compilation phase, okay? So when it is into compilation phase doing these three steps, it's actually creating the descriptor portion of your new data set. So see, first and foremost, it will check the syntax for your data step. Then it will start identifying what columns has to be written to your output data set along with its attributes. And of course, that is what it is creating the descriptive portion. Okay, so this is what happens in compilation. Next is execution. So what is execution? Once the compilation phase is done, SAS enters your execution phase where it starts reading every row from your input data to your output data set. That is where it creates the data portion of your data set. So it reads and write data, perform data manipulation, calculation, and so on. So this is the phase where it is actually going to create the data portion of your data set. And this is the portion where it actually going to create the descriptor portion of your data file. So what happens behind the scene? So this is what is happening, compilation and execution. Fine to every one of you. Any doubts, any questions on the slide?
It's clear, Ashwini.
Okay, great. Fine. So this is how it's telling, how it's work. So compilation, you can always think like it is jotting down the things which is required for your data to be created. So you can just take an example of your cooking task. So whenever you are going to cook a specific dish, it's not that you directly start pouring everything into a pan and its dish is created. No, but before pouring, what you do is you jot down the required or your ingredients which is required to prepare that dish, whatever your dish you are creating. First of all, you may require some masalas, oils, pan. So you keep those things, the vegetable, whatever you're looking, you keep those things ready. So that is what is compilation. And execution, you start putting step by step the things into your required process is called your data portion, or you call it as a execution phase, correct? So how
Mhm.
this execution phase actually works? So first and foremost, once the descriptor portion, that is compilation, is done, in execution phase, when it starts reading your data, okay, or your data step, it reads a row from your input data one by one. So that means in case you have this data set which is class birth date, when it enters the execution phase, it will read first row, okay, into your SAS memory. It will process the whole data step for the first row. When run encounters, it will then move to the second row of your data step, and then your second row will be processed for the second time for the same data step. So like this, depending on how many rows it is processing, that many times this data step will be executed for each row from your input data. So row by row, it will process. So for every row, this data step will process at least once. So if it has 19 rows from input data, your data step will process 19 times in the memory. Getting it, everyone? So that's what it's telling here. In execution phase of your data step, read a row from input table. Sequentially, it processes the statements. At the end, it writes the row at the output table, and it look up or it look back to the top of the data step to read the next row from your input data. So for every row from your input data, this data step will be processed sequentially from top to bottom at least once. So when run indicates, it tells us that the current row which has been processed from input data has to be written to your output data set, and run also indicates that it should go back and process your data step for the next rows coming up from your input data set. So it's an automatic looping, making your process more easy for data to be read for each row from your input data. Understanding, everyone? So this is how your execution phase actually works at the back end. Depending on how many rows, within seconds we get the output. So when I again execute this step, within seconds you're getting this output. So within seconds it's performing the compilation phase also, and it's entering the execution phase also. So when you check your log, it's telling so many rows were read and so many columns and rows been created for your output data, and you get this output data as your mirror image of your input data. So at the back end, it's actually processing with compilation and execution phase. Understood, everyone?
Yes,
So in
Ashwini.
case if you want to know how it works at the back end, you can always make use of this type of statement where it will show you how it is processing with the put statement. So you write put underscore all underscore, and when I execute this, so I'll show you how it looks into log. So earlier we were getting a very concise log, but see now what it's telling, that this is where it's telling you that it is the first row which has been processed from your input data, and this is the first row and this is the first data step cycle. That means this data step processed for this first row. So depending from your input data, if there are 19 rows, same data step will process 19 times. So it's telling all 19 rows been read. So what is this two? So these two are actually temporary variables which are always created at the backend, which are indicating error underscore, indicating that in case you have any syntax error in any of your data step while processing, it will give you the message or it will show the value for error as 1. But here is showing you 0. So this temporary variable in the backend is a Boolean expression which always has the value 0 or 1. 0 indicates currently there is no error. Hence, in every step of this data step while processing 19 times there is no error. Hence, its value is 0. And what is this underscore n underscore? It's actually iteration counter, or it's telling the data step counter. So it's telling its iteration cycle is 1. That means this is the first row which has been processed. So your data step processed in first cycle. So number of cycle first one is 1. So when it enters the second row from this data step, this cycle is the second cycle of your data step. Hence underscore n underscore, that is number of iterations of your data step, is the value is 2. It's processing the second row. Hence its number of iteration, that is this data step cycles or is processed. The cycle keeps on repeating for every row. So this is the number of iteration 2. So depending how many rows it has, this data step process that many times, hence its iteration is 19. Getting it now, everyone? Yes.
Yes, Ashwini.
So
Yes.
this
Yes.
is how in the back end it is processing. So it will not show you about compilation here currently because compilation is free flow without any error, hence no message of compilation, but this is how execution it is showing it happened. So in case if you want to check how compilation stops your processing, just check this. Okay. So when I'm submitting this data step, it went into compilation phase, which is the very first step. So when it is processing this data step from top to bottom, it's reading every statement. And when it comes to the statement sequentially, it finds there is no semicolon. So it treats semicolon as a part of this semicolon, as a part of this set statement. And it is treating as if this is a part of your set statement. Hence, what it's trying to tell is, because the set statement always indicates the input data source, it's treating, of course, this is your data set, space, this is another data set, space, this is another data set. So you're trying to read three data sets as per this instruction. Why? Because it's treating this semicolon as end of for this set statement. Hence, it's telling you there and there that it's not able to find a data work dot put, and it's not able to find a data work dot underscore all underscore. And hence it's telling the system stop processing this step because of errors. And it's telling Though you are creating this new data, it's a warning that this data might have been created. Why? Because it's just telling that it is trying to create, but it is incomplete. Getting it? So this is what happens during compilation phase, that it checks every statement from top to bottom sequentially for its syntax error. So first and foremost, the syntax error occurred, so it stopped processing. Hence, there is no enter of this step into the next processing cycle, which is execution phase. Understood now, everyone?
Yes, Ashwini.
What is a
Yes.
compilation and execution phase? Okay.
Yeah.
So this is very much important for us to understand as a data analyst. Why? Because whenever we are going to write a program and in case we get this type of error and we are looking into log, we are trying to interpret. So the knowledge of understanding compilation and execution phase is required. Hence, we are having this topic here. Okay. So it's telling now we have an activity to open an activity for lesson 4A01. Complete the data step to create a temporary table named storm new from permanent live data pg1.storm summary. Run the program, read the log. Define a library named out pointing to output folder in the main course files. Change the program to save permanent version of this to a permanent library now to out. So what are we going to do it? From temporary data file, we are going to create a permanent data set. So which activity? A04. So let's open this activity from activities folder from PG1. A04 activity for A01 for lesson number 4. So see what they are telling is you need to point out to create it into an output data file. So an output folder you already have. Pay attention what I'm trying to tell you. So I might already have an output folder for your PG1. If you remember, see output folder. So first and foremost for this output folder, create a library called out for this particular program. So let's create a library lib name out. Okay. It's going to be for the SAS file. So engine is going to be same V9. So V7 or V9. So no need of again writing V9 as a engine name here. Okay, so it's telling create a new data storm new. Fine. This has to be created from a permanent library pg1 dot storm underscore summary. Right. So understand when I submit this, where this data set will be saved.
Work library.
Absolutely, it will be temporary. So when I execute this, okay, I'm having an error.
No, STORM, storm.
Spell check for me, right?
Yeah.
That data.
Yeah,
One
next to it.
storm underscore summary.
In data.
Here in
Data.
No,
data.
that is fine, but we have an error for something else. Out library is created. Fine. So if you check this out library, so currently I'll get this out library. Fine. Okay. So do we have error? No. It's telling it's been created. Let's move ahead again. So it's into your activity folder. Yes, so this data is created. So when you check your log, so see now, earlier it was saving it into work library. Same here, see, it's saving into work library and it's reading from your permanent library. Now, if I want to save the same thing into one of my permanent library out, so how I am going to save this new data set?
Out dot.
Out.
We can say
Yes,
data out dot storm.
out dot storm new. So you are creating a new permanent data from a permanent data, but the reference to an output library or the library name is reference is different. So this is how you create your own permanent library and you direct this data file to be saved into your permanent library. So see, your output data set name is out.stormnew. So when you check your log, so it's telling you so many observations were read from your permanent library, and a new data file is created which is saving into out library with so many rows and observations. So it's by default copying all the rows and all the columns from your input data to your output data set. Correct? So coming back to your activity, so it's telling define the library name for output folder, change the program and save it. Okay, leave it. Save means just run for this particular program. So this is where you have created from a permanent library, a permanent data file. All right. So this is what they were telling. Earlier it was temporary, now it is permanent. Correct? So we are going to use this program for your next activity. That is where we have this activity at the bottom. Okay, so we'll see it later. Moving ahead. Okay, so multiple choice of question. The table listed in set statement must be read via a library. Which data source can be used in set statement? So when you are using a library to read a data set with a set statement, what type of data files we are using? Either data
SAS
sets,
tables.
SAS tables.
Tables.
Yes, agreed?
Yes.
Tables.
Yes.
Yes. So you can use an input source as a Excel sheets also or DBMS tables also. Why? Because if you remember your lesson number 2, you were accessing data sets with from different data source. So if you have created a library for Excel workbook, you know you can refer it here as in set statement. Remembering, and if you have importing it with proc import a specific DBMS table, that also you can refer it into a set statement. Agreed?
Yes.
Yes, Ashwini.
Hmm. So any data source that can be read via a library can be used as an input table in the set statement. Fine? Yes. So now here by default, you know, it's reading all the rows for your data set. Come to this program. We were knowing it that for our this current program, it is creating all the rows from your input data to your output data set. But what if we do not want to read all the rows? You can, you know, you can always filter the rows. So we were writing the where statement earlier in the proc step. So it was affecting your result to select the rows only for a specific criteria for your result. But now if I write a where statement in my data step and I write suppose the age is less than equal to maybe 13. Now pay attention. I'm writing this where statement in my data step. So this where statement is same as what you have learned with your proc step, but here you are writing in data step. So what is happening? The new data set created is having now 10 rows, not 19 rows. So when you check your log, of course, this is your, see now number of rows, how many it's reading? 10. Why 10 iterations? Because depending on every row, if this criteria was true, only that rows from this data file is been written to your output data set. So it's telling for this condition, there are 10 rows which are true for this criteria, and that many times only this data step has been iterated. So 10 rows are true for this condition, hence your data step processed 10 times. Getting it? So see, this is true, this is true, this is true, this is true, this is true. So your where statement is affecting the rows for your output data set. So this is where it's telling now there were 10 observations read from your input data for this criteria coming true. So the new data set created is work.class date, which has 10 observations and 6 variables. Understood the difference when we write a where statement in a proc step and a data step. So in a proc step, it just affects the result, not your data source. But when you're writing this where statement in a data step, it's selecting only those rows from your input data to your output data set. Understood?
Yes, Ashwini.
Look at this carefully. Then you'll understand. So during the execution phase, Only those rows which are true for the criteria will be executed in your new data set. Hence, your data step is been processed only 10 times. Why? Because there are only 10 rows which are true for this criteria. Hence, your data step iteration is, so if you'll see underscore n underscore, value is 10. Understood now, everyone?
Yes, Ashwini.
Ashwini.
So where expression will filter the rows based on the expression. So your data step reads rows only from the input table where the expression is true. Fine. So this is one example where age is greater than equal to 15, check out. So it's only 5 observations which are true for this criteria while processing this input data, and only those 5 rows which are true for this is been written to your output data set. So this is the output data set with age is greater than equal to 15. The same thing we had seen in our log also for our current example. Yes, so now this was with respect to your rows, correct? Now, what if in my current processing, it's reading all the 6 rows, okay? But I don't want all those 6 rows in your output data set. So with your procedures or with proc steps, suppose it is a proc print, if you want to restrict only 3 rows, which statement you were writing with proc print? Yes?
OBS is equal to
No, rows, I'm not telling columns. I want to process only 3 columns.
var statement.
Where statement, absolutely. So that was affecting to your result to select only whatever the columns you are expecting. But in my output data set, I don't want now all the columns which is reading from this data file. Okay. So how you will select those columns? So in your data step, one can always use either a keep statement. Keep, suppose I select name, age, and sex. Now understand, when I use a keep statement, look at it, the new data set when created is only with 3 columns. So when I check my log, it's telling 3 variables for your output data set with 3 rows and 3 variables. So with keep statement, you are asking SAS to keep only these 3 columns to be written to your output data file. So either you write keep or you can also make use of drop. So drop means drop all those columns which is not required for your output. So apart from name, age and sex, what you are dropping, maybe you're dropping height, weight and birth date. So if you write height, weight, birth date. So indirectly, what are you keeping? Name, age and sex. Are you getting it? So
Yes.
either of the statement is expected. See, it's showing name, age, and sex. So it's not required that you should use both. So either you write keep or either you write drop. That means from your input data, drop these columns to be written to your output data set. So which columns you have not specified and drop, those will be kept for your output data set. So either of the statement is required. So in case the list of dropping the columns is too huge, you can always write keep to keep those columns which is required to your output data. Fine. Everyone, any doubts, any questions here?
No. We are
No.
good.
Yeah.
So this was about filtering the columns. So either you drop the column which you are not looking ahead in your output data, or you can use keep the column names which you want to keep in your output data. So choose the statement based on the number of columns that want to specify. If the list for dropping is too huge, use skip. Okay.
Okay.
So this is or. So that's what I was telling. Any one of it. So if these statements have the same result in your output, so you are keeping name, age, height, that means you're dropping sex and weight. See, there is no sex and weight here,
Mhm.
right? Either of it. So let's work on this activity. So I'm coming to this activity back. At the bottom, I have activity 3. So it's telling change the name of the output table as Tomcat 5. So same thing they are telling us to be done on the same table. So this was already done, so no need of writing. So it's telling create a new data file, output file, change its name to storm
Storm.
underscore cat5. Correct? Include
Yeah.
only category 5 storms. That means max wind mile per hour should be the column whose value should be greater than or equal to 156. So let's select only those rows on max wind mile per hour column where it is greater than equal to 156. Okay, with the start date and correct. So we are going to combine two conditions where start date is started on or after. On or after means again greater
Greater.
than equal to the
Yes.
date is into a calendar form because we want to subset your data.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
yes, so you write this calendar form of date
Okay. Mm.
and you have to use a d constant because SAS will not understand this calendar date. So this d constant will convert this calendar date into SAS date, that is number of days.
Yes.
Then it's telling add a statement to include following columns. So it's telling include. That means you are going to keep it. Correct? So keep the columns season, space,
Basin.
basin, name, type,
Type
max
maximum
wind,
dates.
Max.
mile per hour. Correct? This went upwards. Let's put it here. And your statement. On execution,
No,
it's
no,
telling, yeah, what happened? Yo, sorry,
semicolon.
yes.
Yeah.
So on execution, it's telling this data set for category 5 occurred. It's saying how many storm were occurred since this
Let's
date.
do.
Okay. So let's execute and check. So you have 18 rows in this data. So these are the columns which we had selected and all the columns, see, whose date of occurrence is greater than 1st Jan 2000, correct? Right? So that is what, how many category 5 storms occurred since Jan 1st, 2000. So how many you got it? 18 rows, right? Fine. So you have subsetted on this criteria. So see, 18. Are you all with me?
Yes,
Yeah.
Ashwini.
Okay. So answer this. How is the keep statement different from the var statement in proc print? I've already given an answer on this earlier, but still, let's see how you can interpret. Just understand, just visualize your proc print with var and visualize your data step with keep. So what is happening in data step and what is happening in proc step?
In data stem, no new data set is creating, right?
Absolutely correct.
And prop print is just showing
Absolutely.
existing data
Anamika,
set. It's showing.
Jagruti,
Yes.
Padma, are you understanding what Monica is trying to tell?
Yes, Ashwini.
So proc is the step where it is affecting only on the result. So your original table is not at all affected. But when we write a data step, the new data set is created with that requirement or criteria. So it's going to be a permanent change on this new data set, not on input. Input data is not disturbed at all. It's from this data, a new data is created for this requirement. Whereas in proc, it wasn't doing anything on data. It was just displaying the things as per your instructions in your output, that is your result window. Understood, everyone?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So come to this activity and work on this. Activity A01, work on the first part, then work on the second part. Go ahead. Now the next part which one can also use in your data step is the format statement. Now remember the format statement in ProcPrint, it was used to display the data values as per your required way to interpret your data, right? Now when I come to this program, fine. Now these are the columns which have been dropped. But in case if I select or I do this way, so your data set will be created with columns name, age, sex, and birth date. Correct? Now you have 4 columns. But this is a data where originally the data is actually having the birth dates as SAS dates, which is in the form of number of days. And this number of days is calculating from 1st Jan 1960 as 0 day, and from that day onwards this number of days have been calculated. Correct? So when I write a proc print, okay, now first and foremost I'll just use that I'm generating a list report. So I write a proc print data equal to, it's a data from my work library. See, it's coming by default class birth dates, and I simply run. So when I run this and I want this report to be submitted for my higher management, whatever the decisions they would like to have it, but they are not able to interpret this data. Correct? So what you do is normally in your proc print itself, you write a format statement for your birth date column. You give the format to be read or which is to be interpreted by them, or which is a readable form. So you may write it that you want it as date 9 dot. Fine. So when I execute this, it's showing in the report. But what about my original data? So when I check the contents of it, so you know what proc contents does? It gives you the descriptor portion of your data set. So it's proc contents for your class data set, class birth date. And when you execute this contents, so it's telling it's a data, it's an engine host and alphabetic list of variables. So it's simply telling that this is a column which is numeric. But it's not giving any information whether the values for this column is applying certain format. It's not giving that information, correct? Now what I do is I write the same thing here and I execute. Now see the difference in the data set itself. See, any special message in log? No. Okay, no special message. It's simply telling it got subsetted and data set is created. But now when I execute this proc contents, do you see something new in this? Earlier we were seeing only 3 columns, variable name, type and length, but I'm getting a new column format and it's telling on this column a format applied is date 9 dot. That is why whenever you will be opening this data or whenever you will be executing this data, default the column birth date will be always shown with the default format date 9 dot. But it's still a format. It's just a format to be displayed whenever this data is been viewed. Okay, originally it is still of date which is in the form of numeric, but this is the way it appears or it shows you as an output for the values in this form. Are you getting it? So in case if I change this that it has been ddmmyy 10 dot. It's the same thing as proc print, only differences in data step it applies this format permanently. So when I simply comment this and I submit. But before submitting, let's check its contents. So when I check my content, I'll get an attribute of format, and now the format applied it will show on this column is ddmmyy 10 dot. And now when I execute this proc print, so I'm not going to apply any format in proc print. Why? Because my data already is having a format applied. So it's an interpretable form of my date. But in case the report wanted this date in a new format, I can always give this so that my original format is simply overwritten and shown in my report as a format of date in the form of date9 dot. Understood now, everyone, what are we are learning?
Yes.
So this will change the permanent format when applied from a data set to be overwritten in your proctoring, but this is temporary change. This will be permanently on your column, that whenever this column is used, it will always show that column has a format of date 10 dot or DDMMYY 10 dot. Understood?
Yes.
Are you getting the difference? Format statement in data step and format statement in proc step. Okay, so that's what the slides are. Format, you know how it is. A statement syntax. Format is the statement which begins with this keyword, a column name and its format name. So formats in a data step are permanently assigned to the columns. So see, in the data step formats for height and weight, you are applying 4.13 dot. So for originally, these are the columns. When you apply this format for your new data, it appears like this. So this will round up the values for your weight, correct? But your height, you are telling 4.1, it will show you with a decimal place with 0.1. All right. So here, though it is a whole value in originally, but because we have applied a format of 4.1, it will try to give you the decimal place with 1. Though it is not having any decimal, it's giving you 0. Are you understanding now how it is interpreting here?
Yes.
Yes,
You can
Ashwini.
try. So you can try this, the whole part. This. So let's do the practice. So practice for lesson number 4 for the first part. Practice is on page 4-11. We can work on level 2, creating a permanent SAS dataset. So it's telling we are going to read NP species table, which includes one row for each species that is found in each national park. Okay, this is the general description of this table. So it's telling create a new program, write a data step where you are going to write from your permanent library and you're going to create a data. Okay, so you have to table and create a new permanent table named Fox. So you can save this table in your out library. Okay, write the new table to output folder. That's what they have given. Include only the rows where the categories mammal and common names are Fox. Exclude the category, record status, occurrence, nativeness columns, run the program. Notice that the fox squirrels are included in the output table. Add a condition in your where statement to exclude rows that include squirrel. Output should look like this. All the column values for common names are ending. See, it's having only fox, no squirrels with it. Fine. So go ahead, work on this. If you So why you're getting this warning is because there is a rule. So whenever you have a data value which you're selecting, which is character type, you put it into double quotes. And for in macro language, there are two triggers of understanding that it's a macro language. One is anything which is beginning with ampersand or with percent. Okay, so that percent sign here for your fox is a beginning sign and the ending sign. Same thing for squirrel, and you put it into double quotes. So whenever you are writing any macro program language like this with ampersand or percent sign into double quotes, it treats as if it's a macro language. So it's telling you a warning that it's a macro language which you are trying to use in your program. Hence, it's not able to resolve because it's treating as if a macro. So when you go back to your code and you change double quotes to single quotes, you will not get any warning.
Okay.
Try it out. So keep one thing with single quote and second thing with double quote. Now leave Fox as it is, okay? And now run only your data step. Run only data step. Check your log. See, do you get any warning now? Since you're getting only for fox, you're not getting
Fox.
for squirrel.
Yeah.
Are you getting what I'm trying to tell you now?
Yes. Yes, Ashwini.
So it's a macro language trigger So anything if you write in double quotes, it will try to resolve it. Okay.
Yeah.
And we know it's not a macro at this point. So it's giving you a warning, but it's not an error. So if you put
Okay.
in single quote, it will not give you a warning because it will treat it as a single value, not to
Yes.
resolve the macro trigger, which is percent sign.
Whenever we will use the macro language, that time we have to put that single quote in the
No,
where
double
statement.
quotes, double
Double
quotes.
quotes. Okay,
Yeah.
double quotes in single. Sorry.
Double
Okay.
quote should be given if you write macro trigger values with
Mm-hmm.
ampersand or percent sign. So once
Okay.
we come to the macros now in detail, you'll come to know why we have to put double quotes for macros.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Jagruti, are
Thank
you
you.
still working?
No.
Okay. So let's move ahead with this topic, which is computing new columns. Now let's see how one can create a new column in your data step for the new data file. So to create a new column, this is what you write a statement. Now this statement is not a SAS statement. Understand, when I'm telling not a SAS statement means as per your syntax, the SAS statement always begins with an identifying keyword, ends with a semicolon. Of course, the statement is ending with a semicolon, but it's an expression. So you're creating a new column is equal to with an expression. So it's called an assignment statement. So it's an assignment statement where you write an expression. So this expression could be either arithmetic expression or it could be also a constant. Okay. So the assignment statement can create or update a new column. Fine. So how it is? So this is where it's telling for your cars data we are working. See now what we are doing here, understand carefully. This is two assignment statements. One with an arithmetic expression where you're creating a new column profit, which you're writing to the left hand side of your equal to sign. So during compilation phase of data step, SAS understands because of this assignment statement that it's a new column. This column is not existing in an existing table. So it's a new column to be created with this expression. Same with this also. So there are new columns it will create for this data set cars news. This is one example with expression. This is one example with constant value. As per this, it's telling either the expression or this assignment statement could be an arithmetic expression or a constant. So this is two examples. So this is a constant value for a source. That means you're creating a new column where the value is non-US cars. Why non-US cars? Because you're selecting those cars which are not from the origin USA. Hence, the source column is non-US cars. It's a constant value. Why? Because every row in the data step or for your new data set, sorry, the every row will be created with a constant value for the new column. Hence, it's a character type of value. Why? Because you put it into quotes. So it's a constant character type of column which has been created with a constant character value, which is not changing as per your data, but it is a constant value which is adding to every row of your data for this column source. Agreed?
Yes, Ashwin.
Okay.
Yes,
So it's
Ashwin.
telling this whatever the value you're giving in what case, same case is followed in every row. All right. You can just observe this code carefully. Understand what where is doing and look into these two statements, how it is adding to new columns in this data.
Okay. It means where is origin not equal to USA, there is add profit and source, right, Ashwin?
You are selecting only those cars for the column origin. I hope you remember what is this data cars is having the columns. It does has a column called origin. Origin means the car origin, from where the
Yeah.
car has been originated. Okay. So when you see this cars table, when you observe these columns, you do have make, model, type, origin. See make, model, type,
Yeah.
origin. See the values of origin: Asia, Europe, USA.
Yeah.
So what
So it's
program? So we are selecting only those cars who are,
not equal to USA.
that
Not
means who
in
are from
USA.
Asia and Europe.
Mm.
Correct? We are selecting only those which are for Asia and Europe. So
Yeah.
for those cars who are from not USA, that means Asia and or Europe, you are creating the source non-US cars. That's it.
Okay.
Got it?
Yes.
So now understand what columns you are keeping: make, model, MSRP, invoice, profit, source. So these are the two new columns which you are also including to your output table. Okay? Why? If I don't write this here, what will happen?
It will be dropped.
Absolutely correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely correct. Correct? So it will
Yes.
be dropped, right? So now when I execute this data step, so when you check your log, it's telling from your input data, it has filtered the rows, which is true for your condition, and total rows are 281. Now the new data set, which is a temporary table, cars new, is also having 281 observations and 6 variables. Why? Because it is subset your data on this. Now with 6 variables: make, model, MSRP, invoice, profit, source. So when you see your output, you will see make, model, MSRP, invoice, profit, source. These are 6 columns. And if you check these values, see constant character value for all the rows. And profit is actually a arithmetic expression between the two columns MSRP and invoice, which is an existing column from your input data. So you are calculating the profit by subtracting MSRP versus or minus invoice. Fine. So this is how you create new columns. Okay, everyone.
Yes, got it.
Yes.
Got it.
Thank you.
Now let me show you the descriptor portion for this data set also. Data equal to, it's your data set cars underscore new. Right. So your new data set is created. So it's telling this is the descriptor portion which was created at the time of compilation phase of your data. See so many rows, so many observations. This is engine host information, and these are the 6 columns, but here they are showing you alphabetically. And this is their original order in the original table. So there is an original format also on this table. Why? Because it's reading from a permanent data set cars. So that itself has formats. Agreed. So that format is also coming along with this data set. Fine, everyone.
Yes.
Yes, Ashwini.
Because if you see this cars data, and if you see its invoice in and this, see it has a permanent format for invoice. For MSRP, it's having a format. Agreed?
Yes, Ashwini.
Okay. And thus we have the same in this demo. So if you open this demo, it's D02. This was the first part which I have shown you. Fine. The second part we'll have to work on it. So open this demonstration, write out this part. It's lesson 4 D02. Then you can work on the second part by reading this. Go ahead.
Done, Ashwini.
Did you write the same thing?
Yes,
Yes.
done, Ashwini.
See, this new columns will be seen at the end of your all the columns in the data, that is at the extreme right side. Yo.
Yes.
So you will also find format has been applied. Jagruti, Anamika, Padma, I hope you are able to follow what the steps to be written.
Yes, Ashwini, I'm
Ashwini.
following,
Great.
but just going a little bit slow.
No
Well,
problem. Take your time.
yeah.
Yes, done, Ashwini.
Okay. Come to this activity. So next topic after this demo is an activity. So it's telling open this activity A04 for lesson 4. Add an assignment statement to create storm length that represents the number of days between start and end date. So run the program. In 1980, how long did the storm named Agatha last? So let's work on this activity, which is a subtraction between the storm start date and end date. So it's an activity from an activities folder. So activity number is A04. Lesson 4, A04 activity. So how we'll add an assignment statement here? You have to create a new column, storm length, which is equal to, it's a subtraction between the start and the end date. So which date is maximum, end date or start date? Yes. How you'll write
End date.
this? End date, correct?
And
Yes.
End date minus start date.
Start date.
Absolutely. Let's check. So it's a new column which is getting added to your data set. So it will be added at the end. So you get the storm length. Okay. Run a program. In 1980, how long did the storm named Agatha last? So going back to your program, 1980, the storm named as Agatha. This. Okay. See, the season is 1980. So how long did it last? So it lasts for 6 days. Agreed?
yes, Ashwini.
We can also write the where statement just to get the result for Agatha.
Yes,
Right?
absolutely. So here you can see 6 days. So Jagruti, Anamika, I hope you wrote the same thing.
Oh,
Yes.
I haven't. I will. No, I haven't. I'll do it now.
Okay. Anamika,
Yeah, I will do it now. Same.
fine, no
I'm
problem.
watching your screen.
So moving next, it's all about how one can create new columns by using functions. Now this functions is the various functions length we have, but this is going to be take a bit time. So we will start this functions in our next class. Okay. So for today, we'll stop for a day. Okay, so functions will be the topic which will be covering, which we are going to see how one can create new columns by using functions. Fine. So one of them I just would like to show you one case of function in my program. Suppose I'll just show you one example for class birth dates. Now you know for your result of your data set for class birth dates, you find it's F, it's F, it's M. These are all small upcase, correct? In case if I want the same column where the value should be in small case, okay? So I can write this sex column, which is an existing column. I'll write it in a lowercase. Fine, it's a function and I use the same column or an argument on my column to be used on sex. So now let's see the values for sex column, how it appears in my output data, where the values I have asked it into big form in lowercase. So see now, do you see it's into lowercase?
Yeah.
So this is how the function works. So argument is you write it into while creating a new column, or you can also update an existing column. You use function on an argument. So argument is a column. Fine, everyone.
Yeah.
So either you create a new column like this, or you can also existing column, or in case you can write a new column to be created sex, maybe it's into, you write it as lowercase. Okay, I'm creating a
Yes.
new column. I write lowercase as my function on my argument column on which this argument has to be occurred. So now I'll find I have two columns, sex and sex lowercase. So one is the original with uppercase. The next I have created, which is in lowercase. All right.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
So this
Ashwini.
was one of the example which I just wanted to show how function works on your column. So in more detail, we'll see about this function also. So there could be another, we can use date functions. Now, you know, in your data, we have dates. Now this is the format which is permanently applied. So I want to see only the months, okay, which the birth dates has occurred. So I may create a new column called as birth month, which is equal to, I extract the month from my date. So I have a function called month. So I write from my existing table, which is an argument on which this month has to be worked out as a function. So it will extract only the 2 digits numeric month from my data where it is telling, see, the date is 16/11/2005. So the birth month 11, so it has extracted 11. Now this is
Mm.
a formatted date, hence it's showing you like this. And this is the date of month on which the birth date has occurred.
Okay.
Got it?
Yes.
Okay. So this is
Yeah.
how
Date
one can,
function is numeric function, right? Ashwin?
yes, it's a numeric. Why? Because it's a numeric column. It is going to extract the numeric value.
Okay.
Fine.
Yes.
Yes. So this is how the functions are to be used, and to introduce with these functions, we have this topic coming up. So how is the syntax? Functions, you're working on arguments. So function name you provide, and in parentheses you provide the arguments, that is the columns, either a single column or multiple column on which this functions has to be done. Okay, so the columns are separated by comma. So function is a routine that returns a value. Fine.
Okay.
So this details we'll see in more in our next class. So for today we can stop our day. All right.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
please revise the topics. In case the video is not uploaded in time, you know you can always revise it by using your handbook. Fine.
Yeah.
So next class
Yes.
we'll meet it day after tomorrow with the same time. So thanks for attending the class today. Take care. Bye and good night. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Ashwini.
Yes.
Thank you,
Thank
Thank
you.
Ashwini.
you, Ashwini.